in the glittering underbelly of New York City, where skyscrapers pierce the heavens like arrogant fingers and the streets below pulse with the raw rhythm of survival, Alexander Voss reigned supreme. A self-made billionaire at 38, his empire spanned tech innovations that reshaped the world, AI algorithms that predicted market crashes, virtual realities that blurred the line between dream and waking life. Yet, for all his wealth, Alexander was a fortress of solitude, his heart encased in layers of cynicism forged from boardroom betrayals and fleeting liaisons. That fateful autumn evening, as twilight bled into the neon haze of Central Park, everything changed. Picture this. A man worth billions, strolling alone after a grueling merger negotiation, his mind a whirlwind of figures and foes, when suddenly the ground seemed to shift beneath him. A rogue cyclist, barreling down the path at breakneck speed, careened straight toward him. Time slowed. Alexander froze, his reflexes dulled by exhaustion. But then, from the shadows, a ferocious bark shattered the air. A streak of fur and fury lunged forward, knocking the cyclist off course just inches from impact. The bike skidded into a bush, the rider tumbling harmlessly, but Alexander's life was spared by a scruffy mutt with eyes like polished onyx. Panting and disheveled, Alexander straightened his bespoke suit, his pulse thundering in his ears. "What the?" he muttered, scanning the scene. The dog, a mixed breed with a coat of mottled gray and white, trotted back to a young woman emerging from the park's fringes. She was slight, bundled in a threadbare coat that had seen better decades, her dark hair tied back in a hasty ponytail, framing a face etched with quiet resilience. Elena Ramirez, 25 years old, an orphan who'd aged out of the system at 18, scraping by on odd jobs and the unwavering loyalty of her rescue dog, Max. She'd found him as a pup in a dumpster behind a diner, and together they'd navigated the city's unforgiving alleys, sharing scraps and secrets under starless skies. "Are you okay?" Elena called out, her voice steady but laced with concern as she knelt beside Max, ruffling his ears. "He doesn't usually do that, must have sensed danger." Alexander, still catching his breath, met her gaze. Her eyes were a deep hazel, holding a depth that unnerved him, as if they'd seen storms he could only imagine from his penthouse views. "Your dog! He saved my life," he replied, his words tumbling out uncharacteristically raw. He reached into his pocket for his wallet, pulling out a crisp stack of bills. "Here, take this. For him. For you." Elena's lips curved into a wry smile, but she shook her head, pushing the money away. "Max doesn't do it for rewards." "Neither do I. Just glad you're all right." She clipped a makeshift leash onto the dog's collar and turned to leave, her sneakers scuffing against the fallen leaves. But something in Alexander stirred, a flicker of curiosity, perhaps, or the rare pang of genuine gratitude. "Wait," he said, stepping forward. "At least let me buy you dinner. Or something for the hero here." Max wagged his tail, oblivious to the social chasm between them, and Elena hesitated, glancing at the darkening sky. Hunger gnawed at her, as it often did, and the thought of a warm meal was tempting. "All right," she conceded, "but nothing fancy." Max gets anxious in crowds. What started as a simple hot dog from a nearby vendor cart stretched into hours of conversation on a park bench. Alexander, accustomed to sycophants and schemers, found himself captivated by Elena's unfiltered tales of foster homes that felt like prisons, dreams deferred for survival, and the small joys like watching sunrises over Hudson with Max by her side. She spoke with a poet's eloquence, her words painting vivid portraits of a life he'd only glimpsed in documentaries. In turn, he shared fragments of his own isolation, the pressure of an empire that demanded everything, the void left by parents lost too young in a corporate scandal. For the first time in years, Alexander laughed genuinely, as Max chased fireflies in grass, his barks echoing like punctuation to their budding connection. Days blurred into weeks. Alexander couldn't shake her from his thoughts. He'd send care packages to the shelter where she volunteered, premium dog food for Max, art supplies for Elena, who sketched street scenes with talent that rivaled gallery artists. She resisted at first, wary of strings attached, but his persistence wore her down. One evening, He invited her to his rooftop gala, a world of crystal chandeliers and champagne fountains. Elena arrived in a borrowed dress, Max at her heel in a bow-tie collar, turning heads not for glamour but for authenticity. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Who's the girl with the dog? But Alexander didn't care. As they danced under the stars, his hand on her waist, he felt the fortress cracking. Yet shadows loomed. Elena's past caught up when an old foster sibling, now entangled in shady dealings, resurfaced, demanding money she didn't have. And Alexander's board of directors murmured about distractions plotting to undermine him. One stormy night, as rain lashed the city, Elena confided in him over coffee in his lavish apartment. Max curled at their feet. I can't keep accepting this, Alex. It's like borrowing from a fairy tale, but reality always bites back. He took her hand, his voice low and intense. Then let me make it real. Stay. Let me show you what we could build together. But just as she leaned in, a knock echoed at the door. His assistant, bearing news of a corporate crisis that threatened everything. Alexander's face hardened the instant his assistant, Marcus, stepped inside, tablet clutched like a grenade. Rain hammered the floor-to-ceiling windows behind him, turning Manhattan into a blurred watercolor of light and shadow. Hostile takeover bid, Marcus said without preamble. They've been buying shares quietly for months. The vote's scheduled for tomorrow morning. If we don't counter tonight, Vostek is done. And you, sir, you'll be left with nothing but your name. Elena felt the air change, the way it does before lightning. Max lifted his head from his paws, ears pricked toward the tension. Alexander's fingers slipped from hers, as if they'd been burned. He stared at Marcus, then at the store beyond the glass, calculating angles the way other men counted breaths. Names, he asked, voice suddenly arctic. Primary aggressor is Harlan Graves, Marcus replied. Your old mentor. He's partnered with a consortium out of Singapore. They're using a shell called Meridian Capital. And Alex, they got something else. A file. They're threatening to leak it unless you step down quietly. Alexander's jaw flexed. Elena had never seen that look on him before, predator recognizing predator. She stood slowly, instinctively moving closer to Max. What kind of file? She asked, surprising them both. Marcus hesitated, glancing at his boss. Alexander gave the smallest nod. 10 years ago, Marcus said, there was an acquisition, a small AI defense contractor. Officially, the deal was clean. Unofficially, certain prototypes disappeared. Classified ones, the kind that could start wars if they surface in the wrong hands. Graves kept receipts. He's been waiting for the perfect moment to bury you with them. Alexander laughed once, sharp and humorless. Of course he did. The old bastard taught me everything I know about leverage. He turned to Elena, eyes unreadable. I have to handle this. Tonight, I'm sorry. Don't be, she said quietly. Go be the man who scares boardrooms. Max and I will be here when you're done. He kissed her then, fierce and sudden, as if sealing a promise neither of them had spoken yet. Then he was gone, coat swirling behind him like a cape, Marcus hurrying to keep pace. The penthouse felt cavernous in his absence. Elena wandered the marble floors and socked feet, Max padding beside her. She stopped at the grand piano no one ever played, trailing her fingers over the keys. Dust motes danced in the city glow. She thought of the first night Alexander had brought her here, how she'd stood in this exact spot, terrified to touch anything, convinced she'd leave fingerprints on a life that wasn't hers. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something cold slithered down her spine. The text was a single photograph. Her, asleep on a shelter cot 2 years ago, Max curled against her chest. Below it, words in red. We know where you came from. Little ghost. Tell your billionaire to stand down, or the world learns exactly what kind of trash he's betting. Another message followed before she could react. An address in Red Hook, an abandoned warehouse, and a time. 2 a.m. Come alone. Bring the dog. She stared until the screen went dark, reflecting her own pale face back at her. Max whined, pressing his head into her thigh. She knelt. Burying her face in his furred away, she had the night. They'd both nearly frozen on the streets. They think they can use me to break him, she whispered. They don't know him at all. By the time Alexander returned, it was past 4, Ty Askew, eyes bloodshot but victorious. He found her on the terrace. City lights glittering below like scattered diamonds, Max sitting sentinel beside her chair. It's contained, he said, voice hoarse. Graves is out. The file's destroyed. I had to trade a few souls to make it happen, but it's done. He dropped into the chair opposite her, exhaustion pulling at his features. I kept thinking about you the whole time. About coming back here and finding you gone. I don't think I could survive that. Elena. She reached across the table, lacing her fingers with his. I'm not going anywhere, she said. Then softer, but someone wants me to. She slid the phone toward him. His face went through stages, confusion, realization, rage so cold it burned. They're dead, he said simply. No, she countered. They're bait. They want you angry and sloppy. That's how Graves lost tonight. He got emotional. You taught me that, remember? Never fight on their terms. He stared at her for a long moment, something ancient and reverent flickering behind his eyes. What do you suggest, then? We give them what they want, she said. Me, but we rewrite the rules. The warehouse in Red Hook stank of rust and river rot. Moonlight speared through broken skylights, painting the concrete floor in silver shards. Elena stepped inside at 2:07, deliberately late, Max heeling without a leash because he knew tonight was different. She wore the same threadbare coat from the night they met, hood up, hands in pockets. 3 men waited in the center, beneath a single hanging bulb. The middle one was familiar, Javier, her foster brother from years ago, taller now, meaner, gold tooth glinting when he smiled. Took you long enough, sis, he sneered. Where's your knight in shining armor? Couldn't make it, she said calmly. Sent me instead. Said you weren't worth his time. Javier's smile faltered. The 2 goons shifted, unsure. Here's the thing, Elena continued, stepping closer, voice steady as scripture. You think you know my story. Orphan girl, street rat, easy mark. But you never asked how I survived the homes you ran from. You never asked what Max and I learned in alleys you were too scared to walk. Max growled low, a sound that vibrated in the bones. Easy, boy, she murmured, then looked back at Javier. You want money? I don't have any. You want to hurt Alexander through me? You're too late. He already survived worse than you tonight. But I'll give you one chance. Walk away now, and I forget your face. Come at me again, and I stop being polite. Javier laughed, pulling a gun. Big words for her. The lights cut out. For 3 full seconds there was only darkness and the echo of his voice. Then red emergency strobes kicked in, bathing everything in blood-colored pulses. Shapes detached from the shadows, silent. Black-clad figures moving with lethal grace. Alexander hadn't come alone after all, but he wasn't leading them. Elena was. She whistled once, sharp. Max launched like a missile, taking Javier's wrist in a crushing grip. The gun clattered away. The other 2 men found themselves staring down suppressed barrels held by ex-Special Forces Alexander, kept on retainer for nights exactly like this. Alexander himself stepped into the crimson light, hands in the pockets of a long dark coat, expression almost bored. You threatened the wrong woman, he said conversationally. She asked me not to kill you. I'm feeling generous. Javier spat blood where Max had released him. You think this ends here? There are more of us. Always more. Elena crouched in front of him, voice soft. Then send them. Every single one. We'll be waiting. She stood, brushing rust from her coat like it was nothing. Take him somewhere he can think about his choices, she told the team. No hospitals. No police. Just time. As Javier was dragged away, still cursing, Alexander walked to her slowly, almost hesitant. You planned this, he said wonderingly. Some of it, she admitted. The part where I walk in alone, yes. The cavalry was your addition, I assume. He touched her cheek. Thumb tracing the place a bruise might have been in another life. I couldn't let you face them without a safety net. But Elena, you didn't need it. Maybe not, she whispered. But I wanted you to see I never will again. They left the warehouse as dawn bled across the East River, Max trotting between them like a bridge made of fur and loyalty. In the car, Alexander pulled her close, breathing her in as if she were oxygen after years underwater. "Marry me," he said against her temple, the words raw and sudden. She laughed softly, the sound bright against the city's waking hum. "You're asking me after I just orchestrated a takedown in an abandoned warehouse." "I'm asking you because you just orchestrated a takedown in an abandoned warehouse," he corrected. "I've never been more in love with anyone in my life." She tilted her head, pretending to consider. "Buy me breakfast first, then we'll negotiate terms." But as the car sped toward a rising sun, her hand found his, fingers threading tight, and she knew the real negotiation had already happened somewhere between the dog's heroic bark and the moment a billionaire realized poor didn't mean powerless. Weeks later, the society pages exploded. Alexander Voss, elusive titan, engaged a mysterious artist Elena Ramirez, the orphan who'd captured his heart and, rumor had it, save his life. The wedding would be small. They insisted no cameras, just close friends and one very important four-legged guest of honor, wearing a tuxedo collar. Yet even as invitations went out, darker currents stirred. Javier had vanished into whatever hole Alexander's people put him in, but whispers reached them. Someone higher up the food chain was angry about the message sent in that warehouse. A name surfaced in encrypted emails Alexander's security team intercepted. Lilith Crow, a financier with a vendetta older than Elena herself, tied to the very foster system that had discarded her. And on the night Alexander slipped a ring onto Elena's finger under a sky full of stars, a single black envelope arrived at the penthouse, sealed with crimson wax. Inside, a photograph of them dancing at the gala, a red circle drawn around Elena's face, and beneath it, elegant handwriting. "Enjoy the fairy tale while it lasts, Cinderella. The clock is already striking midnight." Elena turned the photo over in her hands, Max growling at the scent on the paper. Alexander's arm tightened around her waist. "Let her come," Elena said quietly, fire in her eyes that hadn't been to the night a dog saved a billionaire in Central Park. "This time we'll be ready." Outside, thunder rolled over the city like distant artillery, and the story neither of them had ever expected to live stretched wider, deeper, and far more dangerous than either had imagined. Alexander's grip on the envelope tightened until the paper crumpled like autumn leaves underfoot, but Elena gently pried it from his fingers, her touch a grounding force amid the storm's fury. The thunder outside mirrored the tempest brewing within them. Yet in that moment, as lightning etched jagged scars across the skyline, something unbreakable solidified between the billionaire and the orphan girl. They weren't just lovers anymore. They were warriors forged in a fire of unforeseen fates, bound by a dog whose bark had ignited it all. Max, sensing the shift, nuzzled closer, his warm presence a reminder that heroes come in all forms, furry, flawed, or fabulously wealthy. The days that followed were a whirlwind of preparation, not for a wedding, but for war. Lilith Crow wasn't a ghost from Elena's past. She was the architect of it. Alexander's investigators unearthed the truth in shadowed archives and whispered confessions. Lilith, a shadowy philanthropist with a fortune rivaling his own, had overseen the foster system that had chewed Elena up and spat her out. But it wasn't charity. It was control. Lilith had funneled funds into homes that doubled as recruitment grounds for her underground network, a web of influence peddling secrets, blackmail, and stolen futures. Elena had escaped her clutches as a teen, slipping through the cracks with nothing but her wits and a puppy she'd named Max after the maximum strength she vowed to find within herself. Now, Lilith saw Elena's rise as a threat, a loose thread that could unravel her empire. Alexander transformed his penthouse into a command center, screens flickering with data streams, security teams drilling protocols like elite soldiers. Elena, far from the fragile flower society assumed, dove into the fray with ferocity that left even him breathless. She pored over files, her artist's eye spotting patterns in the chaos. Connections between Lilith's charities and missing persons cases, offshore accounts linked to corporate espionage. "She's not just coming for us," Elena said one sleepless night, maps sprawled across the dining table like battle plans. "She's coming for everyone like me, the forgotten ones." Alexander watched her, love swelling in his chest like a tide. This woman, who once scavenged for scraps, now orchestrated defenses that could topple titans. As the wedding approached, veiled threats escalated. Anonymous packages arrived. A wilted rose with a note reading, "Fairy tales wilt." A collar size for Max etched with "Loyalty has limits." But each barb only honed their resolve. Alexander leveraged his tech empire, deploying AI surveillance that mapped Lilith's movements like a digital net. Elena trained with his bodyguards, her slender frame learning grapples and escapes. Max at her side practicing commands that turned him from pet to protector. Their bond deepened in stolen moments. Lazy mornings where he'd trace the scars on her palms from street fights long ago, evenings where she'd sketch him not as a mogul, but as a man who let vulnerability seep through his armor. The ceremony was set for a secluded island off the coast, a Voss family estate shrouded in mist and myth. Guests were few, trusted allies, a handful of Elena's shelter friends who become family, and Max, of course, ring bearer with a velvet pouch around his neck. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sea in molten gold, Elena walked the sandy aisle in a gown that whispered of simplicity and strength. White silk with embroidered vines symbolizing growth from barren soil. Alexander waited under an arch of blooming orchids, his tuxedo sharp as a blade, heart pounding louder than the waves. But Lilith struck at dusk, her arrival heralded not by fanfare, but by chaos. Helicopters buzzed overhead like angry hornets, dropping operatives onto the beach. Gunfire cracked the air, shattering the serenity. Guests scattered, but Alexander and Elena stood firm, a united front. "This ends now," he growled, pulling a concealed weapon from his jacket. Elena whistled sharply. Max bolted into action, a blur of gray fury disarming the first assailant with a leap that echoed his park heroics. The battle unfolded like a symphony of survival. Alexander's security team engaged in precise takedowns, their training turning the tide. Elena, dodging shadows, used of the rain, hurling sand into eyes, wielding a broken branch like a staff. She confronted Lilith herself in the estate's grand hall, where crystal chandeliers swayed from the impacts outside. The woman was elegant poison, silver hair coiled like a serpent, eyes gleaming with manic triumph. "You think you can rewrite your story, child?" Lilith sneered, a dagger glinting in her hand. "I made you. The system that broke you is mine. And now I'll bury you both." Elena circled her, voice steady as the ocean's roar. "You didn't make me. You tried to break me. But I found light in the dark. Max, Alexander, myself. Your empire of pain crumbles tonight." The clash was brutal, raw. Lilith lunged, but Elena parried, years of street-honed instincts prevailing. As they grappled, Alexander burst in, subduing Lilith's guards. Together, they overpowered her, binding her wrists with cords from the curtains. Sirens wailed in the distance, authorities tipped off by Alexander's preemptive calls, armed with evidence dossiers that would dismantle Lilith's network for good. With a threat neutralized, the island exhaled. Dawn broke as federal agents carted Lilith away, her screams fading into the surf. Alexander and Elena exchanged vows on the bloody beach, rings slipping onto fingers amid the wreckage, a testament to love's resilience. Max barked approval, tail wagging like a victory flag. In the aftermath, their life bloomed anew. Vostek pivoted under Elena's influence, launching initiatives for foster reform, scholarships, safe houses, AI tools to detect abuse. She became a beacon, her art exhibitions raising millions to the cause, portraits of survivors capturing souls in strokes of color. Alexander, once isolated, found purpose in partnership, his empire now a force for good rather than gain. Years passed in a tapestry of triumphs. They built a home not in skyscrapers, but in a sprawling estate where orphans found refuge, dogs roamed free, and love was the ultimate currency. Max, gray-muzzled but ever vigilant, watched over their children, two spirited souls who inherited Elena's fire and Alexander's acumen. One evening, as sunset gilded the horizon, Alexander pulled Elena close on their porch swing. "From a park bench to this," he murmured, "all because a dog saved a life." She smiled, leaning into him. "No, because we saved each other." And as thunder rumbled far off, an echo of storms past, their story, once a whispered chant, became legend. A tale of the billionaire who fell for an orphan, not despite her scars, but because of them. A narrative that inspired millions, proving that love, like lightning, strikes where it will, illuminating paths through the darkest nights. Viewers and listeners alike would replay it, hearts swelling with the magic of redemption, the thrill of defiance, and the timeless truth that even in a world of wealth and woe, a single act of courage, be it a bark or a heartbeat, can rewrite destinies forever. But wait, the echoes linger. In quiet moments, Elena would glance at the horizon, knowing threats evolve, shadows shift. Yet with Alexander by her side, Max's spirit enduring even after he crossed a rainbow bridge, they faced the unknown unafraid. Their love wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was an eternal beginning, a beacon for the brokenhearted, whispering, "Rise, love fiercely, and let no storm dim your light." The city that had birthed their saga watched on, its lights twinkling like stars fallen to earth. Alexander's innovations now healed rather than conquered. Elena's voice amplified the voiceless. Together, they danced through galas and grassroots gatherings, a power couple redefining legacy. Whispers of Lilith's fall rippled through underworlds, deterring would-be villains, while their foundation grew, adopting not just children but causes. Animal rescues honoring Max, tech scholarships for the underserved. On their 10th anniversary, under a canopy of stars mirroring their first dance, Alexander knelt once more, not with a ring, but with a key to a global network of safe havens, named Elena's Horizon. Tears shimmered in her eyes as she accepted, their kiss sealing a vow deeper than words. And so, the billionaire and the orphan, united by a dog's valor, crafted a world where love conquered all. Their story, told and retold, ignited souls worldwide. A magnificent saga of passion, peril, and profound transformation, reminding us that from the humblest beginnings can spring the grandest epics. Listen closely, viewers. Your own legend awaits, sparked perhaps by a chance encounter, a loyal companion, or a heart brave enough to love beyond limits.